What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. Today is September 7th, 2021. And in this video, I want to be continuing my series of doing some divisional previews of each NFL division. I recently finished one doing of the AFC South, which in my opinion is one of the worst divisions in the league. I also finished one doing of the NFC South, so make sure to go check that out. This one is of the NFC West. In my opinion, honestly, right now, the NFC West is probably the best division in the NFL right now, easily, because you look at this. The NFL West consists of the Los Angeles Rams, who are a Super Bowl contender, the Seattle Seahawks, who have been in the playoffs every single year since 2012, the Arizona Cardinals, who are possibly going to have a big year this year, and they also have the San Francisco 49ers, who were just in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago and were actually in playoff contention most of the part last year, despite the majority, it seemed like, of their players on the IR. This division is very, very, very competitive, and no divisional games in this division are easy. You look at, whoever finishes last in this division, I feel like if they were in any other NFL division, they were a playoff team. This is probably the only division where every single team in their division has a decent, case for making the playoffs. We'll go ahead and get started here with the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, they lost running back Kenyon Drake in the offseason to the Las Vegas Raiders. And to me, I felt like they really should have tried to keep Kenyon Drake. He was pretty good, in Arizona, signed a 2-year contract with the Raiders. I just don't really understand why they did not re-sign him. That really makes no sense to me. Another departure to me was very surprising. Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson signed with the Minnesota Vikings, and Patrick Peterson was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in 2011. He's been with the Cardinals his whole career up to this point. And it's just weird kind of seeing Peterson, play for a different team. He was one of those players kind of always thought, he might stay his whole career in Arizona. They also lost, edge rusher Hassan Reddick, who's really been good the past 2 years. He signed with Carolina to reunite with former head coach in college Matt Rhule at Temple. And also on the Arizona Cardinals departures, I don't have him listed because he's not officially retired. But, Larry Fitzgerald, it's just crazy to me. When I think of the most underrated receiver of all time, the number one receiver I think of is Larry Fitzgerald. He has more tackles than he has drops, which is just insane. Look at his numbers. They are amazing. Looking at the quarterbacks he's played with, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, they played with some great quarterbacks, but Larry Fitzgerald did not. He played with some pretty bad ones. And, if they do end up losing him, he's not on the team right now. He's not officially retired. But, losing him, let's say, your leadership in your locker room, that's your team leader. And, you take away him, you do not have near as much experience on your roster. And I feel like that's kind of why they signed some of these, veteran guys in the offseason. For example, A.J. Green. A.J. Green has been around the league. This is his 10th season. He was a rookie in 2011. Green has been injured so much the past couple of years. He is not what he used to be at all. He's only had one 1,000-yard season since 2016. So I feel like this is more so of a veteran signing, get a leadership guy in the locker room type of deal. Since you're losing Larry Fitzgerald, this isn't a bad signing at all. But Arizona fans should not expect A.J. Green to play like he did in 2014 and 2015, because that's just not going to happen. I know there's been reports that he's looked spectacular, and DeAndre Hopkins has said that he's the best wide receiver he's played with. He might look great, but to me, I feel like it's just a matter of time until A.J. Green gets hurt. Then you also look at somebody else who was also drafted in the 2011 class, like A.J. Green, another leader of the team, basically, and a guy who isn't what he used to be, but is injured all the time, it seems like. That's J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt as well, he's only had, I believe, 1 year since 2016 where he's had 10 sacks. It seems like J.J. Watt and A.J. Green just have been unable to stay healthy for the past several years. But I like both of these signings. I think the Watt signing might have been a little bit of an overpay. But when you get two guys like this, one on offense and one on defense, who, if it wasn't for injuries, I fully believe both these guys would be in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, J.J. Watt's going to be in the Hall of Fame, but if Green wasn't injured, I think he would be as well. But I think it's great that Arizona, the majority of their roster is young, but they're trying to get some of these, more experienced guys kind of towards the decline of their career. They also brought in center Rodney Hudson, which I think is really good for Arizona because the Arizona Cardinals offensive line has been kind of shaky ever since Kyler Murray's been a starting quarterback there. And I feel this is a big year for Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. If things do not go what they should, if they have a really bad year, maybe we see Cliff Kingsbury get fired. And I think he knows that. He's trying to get protection for Murray. So there's no excuses for Arizona this season. They get some much needed help at the offensive line, which they could desperately use. They also drafted a couple of nice guys as well. Linebacker Zaven Collins. Apparently they were really, really high on Collins the whole time throughout the draft. There was reports that they were going to draft him where their original first-round pick was about a month before the draft, and they ended up taking him. He's going to be their main guy on defense. They also drafted Purdue wide receiver Rondell Moore to give them more depth at wide receiver, which I think is very, very smart of them to do, especially with that Green signing. Like I said, I don't think that Green signing is as good as people think because he's not going to play a ton because he's going to get injured. So overall, I think the Arizona Cardinals had a pretty decent offseason, but you also have to look at this NFC West. It is not an easy division at all. Kind of goes to the next team here in the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks didn't really lose anybody of huge importance. They lost defensive tackle Jaron Reed and tight end Jacob Hollister. So not really, any huge, departures for them. Nothing that's going to make their play, just really, really bad. But a couple of additions to the Seahawks in the offseason. They were able to bring in Gerald Everett on a one-year deal, the tight end who used to play for their division rival in the LA Rams. I think that was a very, very nice signing because you look at, the Seahawks have used quite a bit of tight ends throughout the years. They've had Jimmy Graham, they've had Greg Olsen, they've had Jacob Hollister, a couple other guys. So I think getting Everett's a pretty nice deal on a one-year deal. They also bring in right guard Gabe Jackson. Russell Wilson was vocal in the offseason about wanting an improved offensive line in Seattle, and they tried to improve their offensive line. But I don't know if they improved their offensive line the best that they could. I still think the Seattle Seahawks could have improved their offensive line better. And then they also, drafted a nice receiver from Western Michigan, Dwayne Eskridge. Giving Russell Wilson some more targets. He has him, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. But to me, the Seattle Seahawks offense, I don't really trust their offensive line. With Russell Wilson, a guy who's been in the league since 2012, who's been a top 5 quarterback for several years, when he's vocal about wanting an improved offensive line, and this is your additions in the offseason are Gerald Everett, Gabe Jackson, Dwayne Eskridge. I mean, that's not bad, but that's not something to, be boastful and, ecstatic about if you're a Seattle Seahawks fan. It's very interesting with Seattle. Like I said, they've been in the playoffs since 2012. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they perform this year. Next up, the San Francisco 49ers, some of their departures, they really didn't lose anybody either of key importance. They lost wide receiver Kendrick Bourne and edge rusher Solomon Thomas. Solomon Thomas was a top 5 pick for them several years ago. That did just not pan out at all in San Francisco. He was not what they expected to be at all. I would say, Solomon Thomas is a bit of a bust considering where he was drafted, but, look at also some of their additions as well. They don't really only have 2 additions that really I think would be of key importance. Obviously, that huge trade of them trading into the top 3 to get North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance. To me, this just makes so much sense. I talked about it for months and months before it happened. I thought San Francisco was going to trade up and get a quarterback, and they did end up getting one that was Trey Lance. I think he's going to be spectacular. He reminds me a little bit of Josh Allen / Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to be great, but apparently I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be starting in week 1. So I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see Trey Lance, take the starting role of the San Francisco 49ers, maybe the midpoint of the season. But I definitely see him starting quite a handful of games this year. And they also bring in starting center from the Atlanta Falcons, Alex Mack. They could use some offensive line help too. They got a really nice center in Alex Mack to give Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance, whichever one, some targets, some protection. So I really feel like, so far the Cardinals, they've improved their team quite a bit. The Seahawks, they've improved. And the 49ers, they've improved. But I would say the 49ers improved more so in the future, and also improved just by getting some of their, starters back. Jimmy Garoppolo was out for the year. Bosa was hurt some. They had quite a few others hurt as well. So this NFC West division is just very, very tough. And, I mentioned those three teams there. That doesn't even include the obvious favorites in the NFC West. And in my opinion, they're probably the biggest threat to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that is the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams in the offseason, some of their departures were Jared Goff. They traded him away to the Detroit Lions with that massive deal acquiring, Matthew Stafford. They also traded Michael Brocker, starting defensive tackle, to the Lions as well. And, obviously, they lost Joe Everett, starting tight end, to the divisional rival, the Seattle Seahawks. So Jared Goff, I feel like Matthew Stafford's a major upgrade over Jared Goff. Stafford's a top 10 quarterback. Goff's, I don't know, even be top 20. Michael Brockers, you lose him, but, you get you free up a little bit of cap space. And Everett, you have Tyler Higbee, who I think is going to have a massive year. And also for the departures, you can basically go ahead and add running back Cam Akers, because it's announced that he's out for the year due to a season-ending injury. And, for that reasoning, they actually traded with the New England Patriots and got running back Sony Michel. Sony Michel is in the final year of his 4-year deal, which I think that's a great pickup for the LA Rams. And you look at this Matthew Stafford trade, I know lots of people were shocked, and people were talking about, that's way too much to give up to get Matthew Stafford, who's never won a playoff game. Here's my thing. You look at Jared Goff, he took the Rams to a Super Bowl. You look at his, for the most part, he's been very successful with Sean McVay. He's not a top 20 quarterback. Matthew Stafford's a top 10 quarterback. Just look what Matthew Stafford can do with the Rams. Matthew Stafford has not had a good team in the Lions since he was drafted. This is easily the best team Matthew Stafford's ever been on. If Sean McVay can make Jared Goff, who's not a top 20 quarterback, like I mentioned, throw for 4,500 yards and take him to the Super Bowl, imagine what Matthew Stafford can do with, I would say, the most underrated wide receiver duo in the league right now, and Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. Look at the Rams. Even last year, they won a playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks against a quarterback who was playing in the AFL, I believe, the year prior. So to me, I feel like this, Rams team, and that trade specifically, lots of people thought it was bad. I think it's great. And they really actually had to give up multiple first-round picks because they had to get rid of that Jared Goff that Jared Goff contract, which is absolutely horrendous, that the Detroit Lions were able to take on in the huge trade. So this division, and for the most part, a couple of these teams really changed, their rosters, like the Rams and, like the 49ers, more so in the future. So kind of looking at my predictions for each team in the NFC West, we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals. I have them at 8-9. I wouldn't be surprised if they did go over 500. But my thing with the Cardinals is, like I mentioned earlier, AJ Green and JJ Watt are not 2014, 2015 AJ Green and JJ Watt. These are guys towards the end of their career who are not what they used to be at all. And with the Arizona Cardinals offensive line, I know they brought in Rodney Hudson, but it's still not great by any means, especially when you're going up against three really, really good teams like the Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers. And let's say the Cardinals get, 6 or 7 wins, maybe even 8, who knows. Don't be surprised if Cliff Kingsbury maybe ends up getting fired. As we continue here, the Seattle Seahawks at 10-7, which to me, I think that's about the perfect spot for them. The most wins I see them is 11, possibly 12, but to me, I think that's kind of pushing it, considering how good this division is. The Seahawks, they were in the playoffs last year, and DK Metcalf proved he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But at some point, you look at this, Seahawks defense. The Seahawks defense was great to end the year, but the offense was horrendous. But to start the season, the offense was phenomenal, and the defense was pathetic. They can never play, it seems like, great on offense and great on defense in quite some time. With this division, playing against the Rams twice, the Cardinals twice. I know I have the Cardinals last in this division, but playing, the Cardinals at home or on the road in Arizona, those are not easy games at all. I just don't see the Seahawks. I don't think it's a guarantee the Seahawks make the playoffs, honestly. I think this might end, their, consecutive years of going to the playoffs. And then you look at the 49ers. I had them at 12-5. I know that might be kind of pushing a little bit, but like I was saying earlier, they were in playoff contention in the majority of last year, despite all their starters, it seemed like, on the IR. I know they lost, their defense coordinator, Robert Saleh. That's a huge blow, him going to the New York Jets to be their next head coach. But I still feel like this, 49ers team can be very, very successful. I don't feel like Jimmy Garoppolo has to carry the team on his back. I feel like he just more has to be in the game manager role, turnover-free football, 200, 220 yards, a touchdown, something like that. They have the type of talented roster where they can carry him more than he has to carry them, which I think is perfect. But once eventually Trey Lance starts during the season for San Francisco, he's played pretty well in the preseason. I think Trey Lance is going to be great. If he started from week 1 to week 18, he would definitely be a candidate, in my opinion, for Rookie of the Year. But since, he's not going to start week 1, I'm not going to do that. But with Lance, I just feel like he's special. The fact that he's only started, I believe, 13 games in his collegiate career and playing at a small school like North Dakota State, and he's still the 3rd pick overall. He threw 1 career interception during his college career. It reminds me so much of Deshaun Watson and Josh Allen combined. And we see, both of those quarterbacks are some of the best quarterbacks in the league. And honestly, you look at Trey Lance, imagine what he can do with this, team. The 49ers have a better overall roster than Deshaun Watson has had with the Texans. And, Josh Allen, he does not have, for the most part, he's not had as good as a roster like Trey Lance does in San Francisco. So I really feel like Lance, whenever he starts, I feel like the 49ers potentially can go on a little bit of a win streak. And then the, LA Rams, no surprise there with the NFC West, divisional champs, 13-4. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they ended up maybe 14-3. I feel like the Rams are going to have, that one game at least where every single team has where they should win and they end up losing for absolutely no reason. But, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams maybe lose a game or two in their own division, because this division is no joke. It is extremely tough. Despite the Cardinals being under 500 and despite the Seahawks having 10 wins, which some people might think they should get more, every single one of these teams are very, very competitive. But what the Rams, to me, with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, it has potential to be just amazing. I feel like it has potential to be one of the best offenses we've seen in quite some time. I'm going to go ahead and say a bold prediction. Matthew Stafford is going to break the NFL passing record this year. That one extra game is really going to help him. And having Sean McVay, has an offensive guru as his head coach will help him so much because he's never had that throughout his NFL career. This Rams team, they are going to be fun to watch. Definitely, the favorites in the NFC West. All 4 of these teams are very, very, very talented. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw, at least 3 of these teams in the playoffs. Maybe somehow the Cardinals sneak in. Who knows? But this is definitely the best division in the NFL today. Once again, the Cardinals 8-9, the Seattle Seahawks 10-7, the 49ers 12-5, and the LA Rams 13-4. That kind of about does it, for this video, the NFC West divisional preview. My last divisional preview will be of the AFC North. That consists of the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and my favorite team, the Cincinnati Bengals. So I thank you all so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I really appreciate it. And I will see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hunt Show.